This is Observations with Otsu. I hope you had a great weekend. I hope you have a great week as well. We're going to get right started into all this. We have a lot to discuss. We had a pretty green weekend over this past weekend. We had kind of a light green week last week. I think there's some good, some bad. After, last Monday, actually, about 1 week exactly ago, we had a pretty big red day, and I think that bled into Tuesday, no pun intended, and then we kind of recovered some of that for the most part. But there was some weakness involved that I was concerned about. A lot of that got recuperated during the weekend, and we'll take a look at that. But today we kind of have kind of like good news, bad news kind of thing. And so I mentioned the theme of this video, Better Call Saul. Obviously it's a play on words. But there's a few different things I want to discuss in regards to that. One, um, and I'll address these least to strongest. There's three main things. First of all, Ethereum broke its 2140 target that I had, and so I do think that that's going to continue to rally. I do. I don't necessarily think it's going to be as strong as people would like. We'll get into that. But we did finally break that weekly price point that I was looking for. So we have new criteria to discuss. Thankfully, I was tired of it lagging so much, and I think we can finally get ahead of that. Um, the second thing is with Solana, and so that's kind of the main theme of the video, but also there's other things at play as well. I do think there could be some weakness for Solana coming in. We'll address that. There is a 1 week bear divergence. Some of you in my Knowhere Discord have brought up concerns, and I agree that I think there are some concerns. We'll take a look at that. We'll look at the good, bad, ugly of all that. We'll see what that looks like. A lot of you guys know that I have Knowhere Premium, which is my premium service, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. But one of those is we have two trading portfolios. One that's just a regular portfolio across the entire markets, and then we have a secondary. Actually, we have three portfolios. We have that one. We have a small cap portfolio, and then we have a Solana ecosystem portfolio. And that was not originally intended, but there was a lot of discussion around that. Solana ecosystem looks good enough to start trading on. We'll discuss that, but overall, what does this mean for the entirety of that ecosystem? Because I do think Solana might be topping out here pretty soon. We'll see where that goes. I don't want to speculate. That's for the Solana part of this video. I'm going to focus mainly on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana, and not focus on any other alts. Because I also want to talk about ETH BTC pair and Sol ETH pair, and I might actually also talk about Sol BTC pair as well. Speaking of Bitcoin, that's the strongest point here. It finally broke its $40,000 range, price point, I should say, that I've discussed. You guys, if you've known my stance, I'm very adamant that we will get to 47,000 and maybe reject from there possibly and go for maybe about a 10 to 20% move downward. So we'll look into that as well. And so with BTC, we'll also look at the index chart, which is what we're looking at now. And then we'll also look at Bitcoin dominance. So a lot of this more integrated pair versus pair kind of thing instead of just market wide conditions. And so the reason why I call this Better Call Saul is I am concerned about Solana in the grand um, vision of the markets right now. And I want to be careful about my wording, and it kind of irritates me in some way because I'll say if I'm concerned about Sol, some of you guys are going to think that it's going to go to $30 or it's going to flash crash. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Okay, and I really am tired of the vernacular that crypto people choose to have versus what I mean, right? And so, the other day I had, a well-intended tweet. It was not there was no personal thing, I'm sure, but somebody mentioned like because I posted, a slightly bullish post, and somebody mentioned, well, what about the big drop that you were looking for? And so that I had to search through my tweets, and there's nothing that indicated that I was looking for a big drop. And so I think, and again, nothing. There's no ill intent. I'm sure that's not where I'm going with this. The thing, what I'm, the where I am going with this is that I think there's accidental misinterpretations across the entire board. Not me, not not just me or other people or influencers or traders or whatever, but it's just the entire culture of the CT group is that we are used to the degen mentality. Like I know people that even this past 7 days have said, "Well, this coin's flying, but it's only moving like 1%." And so, yeah, it's flying on the 1 minute chart, perhaps. But what does that mean? That doesn't mean anything to me. Okay, and so I think it is worth having some due diligence, not just because to get your words right. I have a big English and word based background for my career, so I do take my words seriously in that regard, but also for your sake, so that you don't get overly what's the word I'm looking for? Um, you don't over anticipate or over exaggerate things, right? So like if Ethereum or whatever coin is flying and it's only like a couple of percent, what does that mean when it actually does 30%? See what I'm saying? Like, so I just be careful about how you interpret them. I don't care what words you speak. And again, there's no offense, there really isn't. But I want you to be careful about how you interpret the markets because 2%, and I've said this before, but I've said this probably 6 months ago. It's been a little bit. Like a 2% move is not a nuke. Okay, that's a slightly red day. Okay, 5% isn't even a nuke. 15% is a nuke to me, and so I think that is worth mentioning to get used to what the markets do. And it's also kind of a tell as well on how you may not be used to the markets versus, maybe people that have been here longer or study more or whatever. And again, there's nothing personal about it. There's no insulting by that. I just want you to be careful because it will matter when things actually become crucial to the markets, when it becomes crucial to trade. It will be impactful to you. So anyway, that's that's actually just the introduction to this video. So again, we're going to cover Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana on the weekly, cover the narrative. So with Bitcoin, we're going to cover the Bitcoin chart, Bitcoin index, and Bitcoin dominance. Ethereum, we're going to cover just the ETH chart, ETH BTC chart. Solana, we're going to cover Solana chart, Solana Bitcoin, Solana ETH. And so that's going to be pretty much it. And just view this in the context of seeing like what can we look at next. There's no real theme to this per se, other than the idea that hey, I think Solana might be on pause, but we'll analyze this together and see what the conclusion would be. So for some preliminaries, Knowhere Premium is going to be most of what I want to talk about. It is a premium offering that I have where I go into detail with more charts. I cover more videos. I cover usually about 60 minutes worth of video a week, and I also cover small caps. And then we also have three portfolios, like I said. We have a regular trading portfolio, we have a small cap portfolio, and then we have a Solana ecosystem token portfolio. And so we have that along with other discussions. You get priority access to me versus anybody else because that's where I look first. And so you get all that in one big package, and it's honestly for a small price. It's about $5 per week. It's very very small, and so that's roughly about $20 a month. That is a current low price that I'm offering. That's a discounted price to what I will be offering in January. So if you sign up now, I'm not trying to plug necessarily, but if you sign up now under the $20 price point, you keep that $20 price point as long as you're subscribed and as long as Knowhere Premium is existing, and it should be here for a few years. So that's worth mentioning because I'm going to increase the price in January, and so you can get that lower price point. It's been very beneficial for a lot of people. We had a big long. I think the biggest play we've had actually a lot of successful trades. The biggest trade was probably Blur. We made 71% profits on Blur on that run up prior to the Bitcoin announcement or the Binance announcement. I'm sorry. We we longed it before the Binance listing. We didn't even know that was a catalyst, and then we sold when it got listed, and so that was very beneficial to us. That was our biggest trade. We just closed a Solana trade yesterday. That was before the drop. We have we just closed the chain link trade as well. And then we had some other ones. We are currently in an algo long that's doing very well, and some other things. And so, for the most part, it's doing really good. We also, other coins like Bonk, which is a Solana token, had done really good. So overall, we've had a pretty high success rate for the past full 2 weeks going into week three. And so that's good. We've covered about, I think, eight small cap. No, no, I'm sorry. I think we covered maybe 4 or 5 small caps and about 8 coins on the Solana chain. So lots of discussion. We also had a video. So you also get 2 private videos per month based off of what the community decides that they want me to cover. For the beginning of the month, we covered the Solana ecosystem video. This was a little bit over an hour video. I think it was about 70 minutes long. And so I basically did a comprehensive video on the Solana ecosystem. People don't really talk about this, okay? I think I'm one of maybe 3 people that are talking about this. It is a private video, so only premium members have access. But I talk about the tokens and small caps on the ecosystem, its value proposition versus Ethereum. What's the pros of a Solana? You may know a few, but you may not know them all. So, what are the pros of Solana? What are some of the cons? Because there's 1 or 2 as well. How does it differ versus Ethereum? Should we pay attention to it? I also cover the price targets, like what is my all-time high price target for that for the next season, and also some wallets as well, because a lot of people don't even know. They may be interested to trade, but they don't know how. So I covered, I believe, 2 wallets in this video, and there are others, but I covered the 2 biggest ones, and ones that I have used, ones that I've seen in the wild, things like that. So, for the most part, like I have a lot of practical application with using apps, browsers, things like that, and so most of this is stuff that I have personally been involved with before I have shared it. So this was the first video. I'm doing a second video, and I don't know the theme of it because it's based off of a community vote, but we're gonna do that this week at the end of the week around Friday. So if you want to be involved, you can sign up. There's a 7-day free trial. You can sign up. You can even vote on what you want to do. You are treated just like everybody else during that 7 free day trial. Okay, and so if you decide to stay there, you can pay the $20 and stay. If you want to leave, you can leave. No questions asked. It's no big deal. So, I'm here for the people. I'm here for people that are interested to have a dedicated outlook on the markets, because I'm always here. I'm here every day. I'm here checking everything. Part of it is, I do have a business as well that does cater to the crypto crowd. And so it's a content company, but I'm here for, like, I'm always here, right? So if people want to hear some of my more detailed insights, you get access to that. So anyway, that's pretty much it for the preliminaries. There are some other things. I'm going to launch my Aroon bots here in December. It's probably going to be towards the end of December, closer to New Year's, because of I just been so busy in a good way. In addition to that, might I don't want to speak too soon, but I might have a sponsor for my Aroon screener. And so if that's the case, that's going to get accelerated, and hopefully I can push that out in December as well. And then I have Apex Academy coming up in January or February. There's a few things, maybe mid-January, I think is kind of what I'm looking for. But I also got a big, big, big surprise coming up in January. I cannot say anything just yet, but I'll say more towards the middle of December, even maybe even closer to Christmas. But I've got a big partnership coming up that's going to help be pretty substantial. So anyway, that's a little insight to that announcement of announcement, I guess. So yeah, so that's all the preliminaries. Um, let's just get started on the charts. All right, first things first, we're going to talk about Bitcoin. I'm going to talk about the index first. This is honestly just the Bitcoin price chart, just for a longer scale. It's something that TradingView does. I think based off of the Brave New Coin chart that I think doesn't exist anymore. I'm not really sure. But anyway, One thing I want to mention about this is the RSI level, and I've already got some people kind of being a little contentious about this. And look, this isn't me. This is just what the charts are saying. I am used to people fighting me. Okay, I'm used to getting rejected when I mentioned that we were going to go down at the local top. I wasn't very vocal about that, however. I was very, very vocal about the lows, which I know you guys are tired of me talking about, but that's something that I was vocal about. I've had people block me, I've had people hate me for it. And none of them was capo, which is interesting. But now I am kind of suggesting that there could be a possibility that we reject um, 10 to 20% at some point in the next 60 days, probably more so the next 30 days. And so that I know that that brings up, angst, that brings up anxiety, that brings up fear. It's just like, well, Otsu, I just got in at 30 and now you're telling me, or even at 40, now you're telling me that's, it's going to go down. And so, again, this is just what I see from the charts. So what I see is that, these red markers are, by the way, are the halvings. I don't know. I feel like that's not accurate though. Um, is that accurate? 21. I don't know what that is. Anyway, I'll get rid of that. It looks kind of off. So, um, oh no, that wasn't. Was it the half? I don't know. Anyway, ignore the red lines. They don't matter. I'll just get rid of them. So I thought they were halvings, but maybe they're something else. So, um, sorry, I lost my train of thought. What I want to look at is the RSI on the 80. And so standard rules have RSI at the 70. A lot of people have a lot of different issues about RSI. A lot of people don't give any credit to them at all. A lot of people give too much credit. Well, how do I perceive it? I perceive it in a few different ways. One, I perceive it with this middle line at the 50. Once it bounces above or below the 50, it's usually a good sign of strength or reclaim or what have you. Generally, the RSI 50 is a great way to long and short. Okay, and a lot of you guys don't realize this, that you guys could probably just stop doing all the fancy trading, even some of my bots potentially. I don't, you know, the thing is, it isn't about the bots or isn't about your perception. Like, I could give somebody my entire bot list and my script for free, and they still wouldn't know how to trade. So it's not about my bots or my scripts. It's about the trading application. And some of you guys, and again, I don't mean this personally, but I would look back at your performance and see how complicated have you made this to the point where that complication became a hindrance. And so that's what I mean about everything. You shouldn't necessarily be focusing on, well, who's the biggest influencer in the space and how much crap can I buy from them to make myself elite. That's not, that shouldn't be your mentality. The primary driver to see your success for trading, for your personal trading, should be yourself. And that's the thing. Like, there's a lot more layers to that, of course, but the emphasis should be you are responsible for your trades. And so this goes back to, this goes back to just the RSI, because what if you just longed the 50 RSI? So here's the 50 RSI. If you would have longed back all the way to the other 50, you would have made almost 300% in just that short time frame. And I say short, but that was 6 months. So in that 6 month time frame, you could have made more money then than you probably made in that same time frame already. But you're too focused on alts and everything else. Like I'm happy to do requests. I always am. But I tend to mention here or there, like, you need to keep it simple. Keep it simple. I trade off of RSI sometimes. I a lot of my methods are very easy. They are. Um, and so even with Aroon is similar to that in that regard. So, and so you can take like the 50 here, or I mean, I guess you could short this, and that wouldn't have been too profitable, right? You would have lost 14% roughly. But then going here, you would have made that back, right? And so if you just keep going along these lines, it works out, right? And so this recent price point you could have bought here, um, roughly at 26,400, and you'd be up 56% right now, and that's pretty good. It's pretty good. Um, Versus that's good considering what you're doing, right? So it's yes, it's not overall good per se, but you also need to you need to get over the fact too that there's these traders that have more money than you'll ever have already, and they're winging it, or they have a really good strategy, but that's just it. Those people, as good as they can be, are anomalies, right? Like the average trader is not going to just super trade like that. And so you gotta humble yourself and genuinely ask yourself, like, are you a super trader? Like, how effective are you? And so I'm not saying that to ridicule anybody. I'm really not. I'm saying is you need to work at the level that you're at, like a baseball player, for example. Like some of you, relative to trading, are not professional baseball players. You are triple A or double A or single A, and that's okay. That is okay to admit that. Okay, it's okay to admit that maybe you're not as good of a trader as you think that you are. And why is that okay? Well, one, you humble yourself. Two, you realize where you're at with your own comfort zone. Because part of the reason why you're probably not as good of a trader as you are is because you're trying to be a better trader than you are, and you're trying to be more than what you should be or you can be, or right now in this very day what you're allowed to be. Okay, because you can always learn, and I mentioned this here or there, like try to learn at least one thing about trading per day. If you're a beginner, try to learn at least one thing per day. And so over the course of a year, you will learn so much. Okay, and so that can help very tremendously. And so, but you can't do that without trying to figure out where you're at. It's okay to tell yourself that you suck at trading. Tell yourself that I don't know what I don't know what any of these terms mean. Like when I first started trading crypto, actually, I didn't even know what the word futures meant. Okay, and that's just it. It's embarrassing, yeah. But so what? I learned what it is, and now I can move on. Okay, I didn't know what the word perpetual meant at the time. Okay, I didn't know what cross margin meant. I never even have used leverage when I first started crypto. I didn't use leverage till 3 years after I started trading stocks. Okay, so don't think that you need to get ahead of this. Don't think that you need to have 100x leverage. Like I can guarantee you, I can guarantee this one thing. One few thing I can guarantee in this space is that using leverage as a beginner is the fast way to lose money. Fast way to lose money. You should not use leverage until you're at least an intermediate or a pro, in my opinion. Because most people don't know how to use it properly. Most people look at it in the context of an influencer that they see on Twitter, X, whatever it is, and you see a P&L chart where they made 20,000% off of $5 or whatever. They don't even tell you. You realize that they almost never share the actual price. Um, and so also it's confirmation bias. You only see the successful trades. You don't see the failures unless they're making fun of it. You never see people talk about their failures in real time either. It's always a year ago, right? They'll say like last year I lost all my money in FTX and did all this. And so yes, that's a true statement. I don't want to disregard that. But let's talk about the reality day to day. And the best way that you can improve is to admit your failures, admit where you can learn today, and work with that with the next day after that, and after that, after that. And so keep improving with that. And so this pertains to the RSI factor that I'm showing you because some of you probably just need to do that. And one, get used to that. It helps you get used to having money exposed and how that works and everything else like that. But also as a way to make money. Because some of you guys, let's be honest, are not making money in the biggest move in a 12-month period than we had for quite some time. And so I don't want you guys to disregard that. I'm not trying to get upset about that right now. But I'm up 153% on my spot portfolio. And I've done nothing. I've done nothing. I bought in November of last year. I've held this for over 12 months now. So now I get long-term capital gains versus short-term. And I'm up 153% roughly. And some of you guys aren't even up 50%. And that's okay. I'm not making fun of you. I'm not bragging. I'm not doing any of that. I'm looking at this from a statistical standpoint. That is part of my background as well, statistics. Okay? And this will help you adjust to that. Because if you traded off the RSI, you could get that 50% that you would have gotten anyway, but you also would have saved a lot of time. And I mentioned this in a private video a few days ago or what have you, because I'm up 150% on my Bitcoin and on my spot, portfolio. I think it's actually higher than that because I got Solana. My Solana I think is a 3x or something. So, but though my spot value portfolio has done so well this year that I'm able to be comfortable just ignoring it. Like I don't really check it anymore because it's up so high, which allows me to look at other like swing trades. It allows me to look at scalps. It allows me to educate other people on how to trade. It allows me to do things like Knowhere Premium. And that's one reason I did hesitate for the Knowhere Premium, so I can be more comfortable with my capital because it makes no sense for me to start a paid program if I don't know how to freaking hold my money. See what I'm saying? And there's a lot of people out there that are willing to just charge you money for crap and they don't even know how to trade. And the thing is, a lot of people, you know, people can be good traders or good marketers. Chances are it's very rare for people to be both, honestly. So, or educators, I should say, not marketers. But some people do market to you and try to scam you like Bitboy. So just keep that in mind. But overall, I do trade very basic things. I trade 200 EMA, for example. Um, and so that helps. Don't ignore these dead simple strategies. And I can't tell you how many people made fun of me or blocked me or said or just disregarded me over buying 17,000. But I also had a lot of strife about the 200 EMA as well on the 1 week chart, I believe. So it was a high time frame chart, but because it only happens once a cycle, well, it happened and it happened again. And I understand things look differently when things are 16,000 or 20,000 or whatever, and you get a wick like this, but that's part of the cycle. That's part of what happens right now. And now Bitcoin is pushing closer to 42,000 while everything else is panicking. And, you know, that's just something to keep in mind. I don't know. I also, this is kind of not semi related, but I also feel like people need to focus on having a large Bitcoin portfolio as well. I do think the market is much more graceful to you if that's the case, and ultimately you want to hold your Bitcoin value anyway. And so, speaking of Bitcoin value, let's go to the Bitcoin dominance chart. I'll get to the price chart here in a second, but I'm going to focus here on the dominance chart next. All right, so here is the Bitcoin dominance chart, and there's a few things. There's a preliminary thing. Is like one we had, I think on the 2 week chart. I can't remember exactly where it was. Oh, and you know what? I'm on logarithmic. That's why. So we'll go there. And so this was a presentation that I made a couple months ago. Didn't really pan out as I anticipated, but there could be something that we can salvage. So the trend line here, it rejected here back in 2021, and then now we went to this price point again. I thought that we would reject and alt season would kick in. I was not correct. I was wrong about that. We do have an Aroon wedge or Aroon consolidation very wide coming in, but we also have a run up, which is very interesting because we should actually be going down. So it's very likely that we could be doing the very opposite. We could be coming above to the upside and then rejecting again. But I think it's worth just kind of keeping this in mind for now that we have surpassed this resistance point, and typically once we do that, Bitcoin does tend to run much more dominant than it usually does. So I think we could be kicking in again. We're at 4.5% for the day, while most everything else is kind of panicking across the board. But we got El Bonk, which we're in on our premium, is up 18%, which is good. And so overall, this is looking pretty healthy for Bitcoin, honestly. I think that's the key thing is that I don't want people to forget Bitcoin. And so the thing is that let's say Bitcoin goes up to 150,000. I don't think it will, but let's say it does. Well, that's, what, like 4x from now, 4.5x from now. So let's just round up for theory's sake and just say 5x. There's much more opportunities elsewhere. There is. There's much, much, much more opportunities elsewhere. But I don't want you to negate the fact that Bitcoin is going to be much more of an assurance per se, relatively speaking. It's not guaranteed, but it might be a safer hedge, especially with ETF coming into play, because them boomers are going to start talking about Bitcoin when you've probably been in this for a year, at least 2 years. I've been in this for 6 years, going on 7 years. And so when I first joined, it was still way unacceptable, honestly. And so, but anyway, this is what we got on the dominance chart. So it's looking pretty good if we can hold above this for the week, for the weekly, actually, not the 2 week. And so it will look very good. In fact, well, maybe it would be 2 weeks. So let's just go ahead and go up there. So if we can hold that for about 13 more days, then I think this will look much more strong, much more dominant. So, and I really don't think you've probably seen much yet. I think we could go to 47, 48,000. We'll get into that. Then we could get a market drop possibly. But I still don't think Bitcoin will drop as other alts, and it still might increase in its dominance. So we'll get into that. But that's just a dominance chart, for example. Let's get into the actual Bitcoin price chart. All right, going over to Bitcoin. So I'll cover 2 week chart just briefly. But what basically I would just want to mention that we are in a full bullish Aroon trend. RSI is hitting about 72, so we still have some room on here on the RSI as that's concerned. Pretty big run so far. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 2 week bullish candles, and that's pretty significant. I think it matches this kind of swing up here before the parabolic run, and it might even match here, I believe, as well. So I think that kind of is telling because we could possibly the next 1 to 3 candles we could get a dip. It's about time. I don't want to say this, and I know this is unpopular, but it is time for a bearish 2 week candle. It is. And so I don't know when that's going to be. I don't know what the price impact is going to be necessarily. I'm not trying to be a bad news bear. I'm just saying like that will be healthy because that counts as a subtrend and that will be healthy for the overall impact on the markets. For this particular case, was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? We were roughly at about the same price point, and we went on to have 3 more candles after that. So I'm not saying it needs to even happen right away. And then that one candle would even help impact this future distribution or this previous distribution that we had. Also here for this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think that was a bearish candle too. Yeah, that was technically. So I guess this is the only example from before. I guess this one possibly counts, but you're going pretty far at that point. So I think that's worth noting. I think it is time for a bearish candle to set in place, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. So we're here to look at the markets, not my personal interpretation. So let's go. So I want to mention a few things here. One, we have pretty much the same pattern here. We've had about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bullish candles again. So we're currently on the 8th bullish candle. We are above the RSI at this time for now. This could change. We do have 6 days left. But that's something that I want to keep in mind. In addition to that, I want to go over some history here. So the Aroon is still in a bullish trend, and it's been like that for some time. We had the bullish breaker from here. We've not had a drop down to retest that. And so going along with that, we went ahead and just brushed through all this. And so now this fib block right here is the local block, and we've brushed above that too. We broke the high on that. And so that means that we should rally. So overall, there isn't much else to say on the weekly. We've breached. What I want to say is we did breach above this, so that does give us some context. So now, what is next as far as levels is concerned? Well, you guys know I do a lot of fib blocks, so this will be the top of the next range. This is your bottom of the range after that. And so now here's the mid. We just broke above the mid, and so I think we'll head to the top, which is about 48,200. That's my next price point target. And so I think that we will probably hit that pretty soon. I think I'm under the general consensus as everybody else that I think we will get a continued hard bullish rally, and then we'll do a pullback after that. And so primarily I'm looking for maybe a div perhaps to kind of sell some of my long-term gains. And so we'll see how that goes, but I still think 48,000 is on the table. I've had a low target as low as 47,000, and I think that's because of my place point here. And so it just depends on where you put the marker. So it's going to be somewhere between 47,000 and 48,200. And so roughly, I think if we get to 47,500, I think that might be a time to take some profits off of that. And so that's just worth keeping in mind. Also keeping in mind alts, things like that. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. Apologize for sniffling and sneezing. I'm trying to mute the mic, but I think I'm starting to get some. My son is sick, so hopefully I don't get sick as well. So this also matches with this little consolidation period, and so that the mid of that matches roughly the top of this. So you also could adjust it to match that, and then that would also make more sense. So your take profit could actually be 47.7 as an area. So that's also worth noting as well. So everything else looks pretty good. I am concerned that the candles are bullish for the eighth week in a row, but that's not a big deal. And that's where you need to keep in mind. I got some people that are saying like, "Hey, Otsu, what about this? What about this? What about this?" And like things that I have mentioned before that are concerns, but you also need to bring them in the right context. Okay, so like divergences, for example, yes, they matter. They are huge concerns, but you also need to consider the grand context. That divergences, for example, might not have as much of effect on the 4 hour during an uptrend. Also, you got to understand, can it be invalidated with a hidden bull divergence? A lot of people ignore hidden bull divs because they think that they don't work. Well, they're not meant to work. They're meant to invalidate bear divs. That's the whole point of them. They're not meant to show you a bullish trend. That is meant to invalidate a bearish one. And so that's the whole point. So anyway, this is your context. Looking pretty solid. I think 47.6 is probably going to be your minimum high target. And so we'll see where that goes. Um, I mean, it's possible we get all-time high at the end of the year. I don't think so. I don't think that we're going to go that high that fast, but it's looking pretty solid thus far. So yeah, 48,000 is my high target. And so here is the daily. We're going to talk about the daily here next. All right, so looking on the daily, we can see a few different things here. First of all, I have a long position. This is what I currently have. I've expressed this in Knowhere and Knowhere Premium, and so that's kind of like a tidbit of information. Second of all, so this is the daily. We got about 4.5 hours to go, but I want to mention this trend line, and I've been talking very much about trend lines lately for good reason because they're one of the easiest ways to interpret a continuation pattern. If you're not aware of how to trade in a bullish condition, go ahead and look for my trading bullish price action video. I'll try to link that at the very end of this video. And that'll show you 7 different ways that you can trade in a bullish market condition. And so, but this is one of them. Find a trend line break like this because once a break tends to happen like this, it tends to continue to rally. It doesn't necessarily go past. And the thought process, the theory, the market theory behind this is that the demand has finally caught up enough where the demand is actually higher than the trend, or it has eclipsed the trend, I should say. And so the demand will continue to increase. You'll get new demand, and then that will feel even more demand. And so there's a certain point where it kind of like rolling downhill. Like there's a certain momentum where if you roll a snowball down a hill, it'll eventually roll itself. And so, but just think about that from the upside. There's a certain point where you don't need to give it any more gas. It'll create its own momentum, so to speak. I know that's not right as far as science goes, but it'll eventually have its own momentum. The new demand will look at, because some people, I know people that have been interested to buy Bitcoin this year, normal everyday people that have not bought it, and now they're probably thinking, okay, maybe I need to buy some. And so that's the thing. And so for people like us, it's like, well, okay, you got in late, whatever. But for some people, 20% is a lot for them in a year. Because I know some people that, I mean, I know a lot of people, of course, that have a big stock portfolio, and a good year for them is 20%. Well, I mean, that's great. That's actually, people need to start normalizing that 20% per year is actually really freaking good, honestly. And I know that's insultingly low for some people, but if you take that year after year, that's very significant. I mean, for example, if you, let's say you had $500,000, which I know is a big starting amount, right? But if you gain 20% over 10 years, you're going to have about 3 million US dollars after the end of the 10 years. And so that's pretty significant. I don't think people should ignore that. I really don't. Um, because that's a big gain. So it's going to be roughly about a 6x over the course of 10 years. And so that it also it does depend on your starting capital. And that's where I think not everybody I think everybody's different, but if you can, I would continue to try to make money while you trade, like have an actual job as much as you can, because you want to prevent those drawdowns. And so anyway, that's part of it. So anyway, going back to the chart, however, if we close above this, not only do I think that we could rally, but you could also do a second long position. So that would be, let's say we close right here. You could put your stop probably just below the mid, and then you could target the same time frame, 2.7R, 2.8 with a 13% run. Pretty, tight, not exactly a tight stop, but not necessarily a loose one either. So that looks pretty good. On top of, if you have already longed with me, you're already in this position. So I might long a second time, to be honest with you. But so we'll see where this goes. But this is pretty close to the edge, to the trend line, so it could close underneath. And so that's what I would want to look for. And that price point would be roughly about 1%. So it could drop as low as 1%, still be up 3.5% for the day, and still reject that trend line. That also does not mean a rejection. I want that to keep in mind. I say reject as far as the current price, but I don't say that as a rejection. So I think, again, there's that terminology that keeps bringing up. So overall, this is looking pretty solid. I think we're well on our way to 47,000. I think that's looking perfectly clean. We're getting a little bit closer to the edge of the 80 percentile on the RSI, but everything looks fine. So that's pretty much Bitcoin in a nutshell. We're going to go to Ethereum and cover the ETH USD and BTC charts, cover with Solana, and continue going with that. All right, going on to Ethereum. Going to cover the weekly time frame first, kind of put this into context. So first things first, I want to address this big ascending triangle that we finally broke out of. It's been a long time coming. It's been about a year. I've drew this basically like right here. So I've followed this pattern for 9 months. It's been very tedious. I am pleased to say that it has finally broke above. And so we have that. We originally had our spot here, had the deviation, had to wait for that deviation break. I mentioned to most people that yes, I mean 2000 is a considerable marker, but 2140 was the marker to break. We did break that as of yesterday. So that's good. That means there's fresh longs at the table, right? Well, probably yes. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. We have this structure. I believe this is a daily structure. We might have some small resistance at 2340, but I think after that we're probably on our way to about 29,3000. I think that's pretty easy to see. Aroon trend is full bull. There is a downtrend for the bearish price action, and that's good. You want to see this go up and then this continue to go down. That is a sign that we would probably go into more of a parabolic state versus a range state, and so that's something to keep in mind. The thing is, if this continues to stay high while this continues to stay to zero, then that is a sign that we would probably like a blow off top. So that's a danger zone potentially. So right now it's looking okay, looking like it's going to continue to run. Going to go to the daily. There's a long position that I have set up as well, based off of the break of that, looking pretty solid. Again, everything looks fine with Aroon. RSI looking good. And there's really not much to be said. Again, it's one of these things that's once you get the breakout, it's pretty clean. It was just a matter of trying to wait this out, and we waited out for so long, um, and finally we have broken this, and so we'll see where this goes. If this closes back below 2140, then we're in a danger zone because that counts as a deviation, and so now we have to reanalyze our long positions, probably cancel the long positions, and then reevaluate the next direction for that. And it's also keeping in mind with excuse me with ETH BTC or with Bitcoin being so strong, it doesn't necessarily make sense to be super into ETH right now either. And so we need to keep that in mind. I think it'll perform well, but I'm almost wondering if Bitcoin's going to perform first. And I actually did not anticipate for Bitcoin to run as hard as it was compared to ETH. I figured that once ETH actually broke above, that it would be a market leader perhaps. So, but we'll see how this ends up. So, and speaking of BTC, we're going to go to the ETH BTC chart. All right, so here's the ETH BTC chart. We're going to analyze this just for a little while. I don't really trade the ETH BTC chart. I don't really trade BTC pairs anymore. Not like I used to in 2017, 2018. But one thing I want to mention here is on the weekly time frame, we are matching this area right here. And so that's pretty much, I've had this here for a few months, I believe. But we're starting to look for a drop down here, and that's expected with Bitcoin rallying so hard. We have a Aroon bullish wedge starting to form. It's currently a consolidation, but it's going to be a bullish wedge possibly. And so what this could mean is we actually could get a drop. We could set up a divergence. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Because based off of the length of this, I think that probably could happen, and then it could rally. So I do think so. As far as trying to analyze what we could see, I think we could see that Bitcoin rally to 47, 48, and I think we could do that rather quickly within a week. Probably less than a week, but maybe 2 weeks to play it safe. And then followed by an altcoin rally with Ethereum leading the charge. And so that's kind of what I see with that. Other than that, there's really not much to explain on Ethereum. One thing we can kind of look here, I mean, we can kind of try to analyze this. And so, I mean, and this does work. So that does match the confluence with that. And so we'll just see how that plays out. I think this could probably rally from here, and but we'll see what it says. I do think Bitcoin is going to continue to rally first, and until Bitcoin shows some temporary weakness, I think that won't happen until that occurs. So, all right, on to Solana next. All right, so Solana, we're going to cover the Solana on the weekly chart first, then we're going to cover Solana Bitcoin, then we're going to cover Solana ETH. And so I want to bring this in the bigger context of the theme that we have, Better Call Saul, because I think there are some concerns about the market, and I was going to leave this for the main event, because I think one, Solana has rallied significantly. Two, I think that's a good example of the rest of the market to go up significantly as well. And but three, also to see like what are some options as far as um, a drop down, because I think we could see one. I think you guys know, if you know me, if you've seen my videos before, you know that I'm anticipating $48, and so now that $48 has been tested very significantly because we rallied much farther away from that. And again, it doesn't have to hit 48. Like, I'm not one of those people that say I know what's best. I'm better than the market. I know exactly what the market's going to do. Like, no, you need to have some humility in that regard and realize that your price point may not even happen. And guess what? That doesn't necessarily mean that you're wrong, but it also does mean you were wrong too. And that's the thing. You got to get over the fact that you are wrong pretty often, honestly, more than you might think. I mean, a lot of people just save face. They really do. but also to realize that those wrongs aren't necessarily wrong because the market is dynamic, the market is subjective in many cases. So you need to understand that flexibility and elasticity with trading. So let's kind of go into the chart first, then we'll do some comparisons. A lot of chicken scratch on here. Let me see if I can just, for the weekly, I can just go to a different chart, I think. You'll get more on the Binance chart anyway. So we already have some of this here, and so I'll get rid of these. Sorry, I should have been more prepared. But so we had basically $8, $10, bottom, right? We had this consolidation period, breakdown, impulse, breakdown again. This was your launch point. We took off from there, and so from this point, you could have took this in various different ways. From the bottom, which most people obviously didn't do, is up 500% or more. Um, from this from this breakout point, this was probably your marker to get back into the market. You went up about 154%. Now, I think I know I got in the 19 range. So if I let's just say 1950, that was about 2x from now. So or 200%, so it's a 3x technically. So that's kind of where we're at with the markets now. There's a lot of things going on with this. Solana is a very big coin. In my opinion, I don't think I'm very bullish on Solana. I want you to know that. I want you to know I'm very bullish on Solana. That being said, I think most of the rally was a result of that we went too far down and we had to correct. Okay, and so now I think we're more on the time on the terms of a fair price point. You can see here we have cleared the highs from this range, so now we're above that, and now we're kind of in this weird zone, kind of in this weird area right here. And so now we are actually at the midpoint of that area, and so that needs to, that needs to be taken into context because we could bounce from here. So now we're kind of stuck within this range. If we want to rally higher, we need to close above $65. We're about $5 below that. We also had a significant, not a relatively significant drop down today in Solana versus the rally on BTC. So there's about a 7% swing on that. And so that is pretty significant. We also have the bearish Aroon consolidation, and it's at the 15% marker. That's going to lead into a wedge, which makes me think that we could go down or sideways for at least 4 more weeks, upwards to 8 weeks. And so that's something that I want people to keep in mind. I think that we could see a temporary reduction of performance in Solana. I think it will be temporary. I think we will eventually go higher. And that's where you just need to be patient. And so, like, for example, like uh, going to Bitcoin, like there's this example right here is like you have a slow bleed for 2 months. You got to endure that. That doesn't look that painful in hindsight, right? But that was pretty painful for a lot of people. It only went down 8%. So with Solana, I mean, it could do the same thing. I'm not, and so I want people to keep this in mind. I'm not saying that we're going to flash crash or even go down 50%. I want people to notice that. And so my $48 target is a 20% drop. I think that's respectable. And I think that's still a bull run target price point. So I'm not saying what price that's going to necessarily be. I'm looking from an Aroon perspective. It is currently bullish, but it's consolidating down. Bears are going to have a chance. I can tell you with these wicks, they'll definitely have a chance because when you have wicks like this, they tend to challenge the bull side, even though that was bullish per se. So just got to keep that in mind overall. In addition to that, we do have a bearish divergence, and so I want to mention this because we have a divergence on the 1 week, 3 week. I don't think that we have it on the 1 day. No, not right here. And so we have a slope, which I'll talk about though. And so, but I want this to keep in mind. I've had some concerns about this divergence, and I do agree that there are some concerns. Now that being said, divergences don't have to play out. And I know this is going to sound counterintuitive because I talk so much about using divergences as a means to trade. But if you look back at my videos, you'll see that most of the context for divergences are in a response to take profits. They're in a response to take profits. They are not responses to short the market necessarily. It depends on the context, right? And so if you guys know, one of the reasons why I looked at buying Bitcoin at 17,000 basically is because I had a liquidity buy signal on the Aroon and I also had a bull div. And so those two combined allowed me to look at the markets and say, "Hey, I need to buy. We're already down 70%. I think this is a good time to buy." Okay? I did not think it was the bottom necessarily. I didn't know that it was the bottom definitely, but it worked out that way. And so that's something that's something you just need to keep in mind, right? So now with Solana, what is and so this is one of these things like if you've been in Solana for a while, maybe this is a good time to take profits. So that's worth keeping in mind. Now, as far as invalidations are concerned, I'm not concerned about this just yet, and the reason being is because this is not a confirmed div as far as application or execution, if that makes sense. I'm going to confuse a lot of people here, but it's worth mentioning because a lot of people are kind of getting on to me about this divergence, and you can't just look at every divergence and say, hey, this is going to go to zero. And so the rule of thumb on this is that you take the divergences, and so we'll look at here for the vertical line. So here is the top right, and so that's that candle. And you look at the divergent one, which is this candle. And so what you need to do is these are your two candles in mind. What you want to do is you want to take the first one, the one that had the higher, the higher RSI. It's usually the first candle, almost always. So, and then you put a line there at the close. And so this does not get activated until it reaches $56. And so that's the rule of thumb. And so the thing is, you're looking at this from 2 points, and I want you to emphasize. I want to emphasize that the RSI is being looked at in two different ways right now. The way I'm saying it, I'm saying two things at once. I'm saying as far as take profits, it is okay to take profits now. I do think it is. Okay, I don't want you guys like I'm sorry if that's counterintuitive to some people. And we could definitely go higher. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that we won't. But what I am saying is that some of you, like me, have been in this for 2 or 3x already. It's okay to shave a little bit off the table. Okay? It's okay to recirculate that. See what I'm saying? And so keep that in mind. We are at a really good point as far as liquidity is concerned, as far as the RSI, as far as the price point. Everything is at a good enough standpoint where we can just say, all right, it's time to take some off the table. It's okay. And so the divergence there is part of seeing that. Now, the other part of the second thing about the RSI is that if you want to confirm an actual bearish trend forming, you want to wait for this drop down to happen below the previous opening of that other candle, which is at $56 in this case. And so as long as it holds $56.20 roughly, I think that that's okay to maintain the meat of your position, so to speak. Once that goes down to 56.20 or goes down below 56, then you can cut your position. Okay, and again, it depends on your position. For me, I'm doing the long term. I'm okay losing some short term to gain more long term because I don't want to sell this at 60. I want to sell this at 600. Okay, so keeping that in perspective. But for some of you that are maybe in a swing trade, you could cut everything at 56 and I think or 55, you'll be okay. So that's what I mean by divergences. There's two sides of the same coin right there. So most of the time when I'm talking about divergences, I'm talking about taking profits, okay? Now, larger time frames, which I guess 1 week is a larger time frame, then that could be a considerable selling, buying, whatever, right? So just keep that in mind overall. And so Bitcoin's rallying into the fives. So just keeping that in mind. So that's the context for Solana on the 1 week chart. Now going on to the daily, I'm going to go to my chicken scratch chart here. And so a few things to keep in mind first of all, we got this slope here. There's a lot to digest here actually, and so that's one reason why. Yeah, I'll just get rid of that. It's one reason why I wanted to kind of wait for this one to last. So we had the run up, and so I actually want to briefly go to like the 4 hour chart because this is very reaccumulative in nature. This is getting very close to invalidating. I've actually closed this position already because of this divergence here, the RSI divergence, and so um, this is not invalidated yet. It's very close. It needs to close below this 50 58 67 marker. So, but with that, we're still looking for. Um, we are still sorry. Uh, we're still looking for the reaccumulation. It still could happen, but we're just being mindful of both sides on that regard. And so this is there's a few other things to add. So this was the consolidation period that got me to long. I got out on the divergence. Not the best trade, but it was a profitable trade. So we got to keep that in mind. Take our money and run in that particular case. The Aroon also crossed bearish, but we're setting up a bullish consolidation. So if this closes as it is, then this could actually be a rally higher. And that's also a good area to do so because it could bounce off of this local range. Additionally, we have the RSI 50 that is broken below, so that also confirms our the idea that we should get out of position on this. But then if we rally above the 50, then we're good to go again. And so just keep that in mind. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of things at stake here that give me cause of concern. So the high time frame Solana still looks great. Okay. Even lower time frames and middle time frames are looking a little concerning for now. I don't think there's any cause of concern overall as far as it depends where you're at, right? If you're in it for the long haul, I don't think you should really do much of anything. If you wanted to trade this, it is worth trading as you normally would. And so long shorts, that things like that. My Apex script, by the way, can help very significantly with this. And so I just added my Apex script. This is exactly what you would get if you get this. So I want to keep in mind is that we had a buy signal down here at $21. So let me kind of adjust this for a second. My goal isn't necessarily to talk much about this, but um, this is a good setup. So let's go here, long position. This is where you would have gotten in, and I don't know why it does that. Oh, it's on logarithmic. That's why. Sorry, about ready to get mad at TradingView like I do pretty much every day. So um, we got to adjust this because it's such a tight stop. So it's basically 80, less than 1%. So let's go ahead and round that up to 1%. So that would have been, you could have leveraged that perhaps or adjust accordingly. But we're all the way up from that. So if you would have went from the sell signal here, you're looking at like 153R. You can barely even see it. So that's pretty significant. I can tell you right now what this is a paid script, but I'm telling you it's cheaper than what that trade just was. So keeping that in mind, you would have basically got a free script out of this based off that trade. And so looking at these as well, this would have been okay, depending on where you got out. This would have been slightly profitable, perhaps. And this one would have helped you get in already. And so this is the point that I want to mention. It's not necessarily about the performance. It is. I have 6 backtesting videos that show you the performance on this. I've looked at mini coins. I've looked at stocks, things like that. And so that's worth mentioning, right? But if you would have got in at this divergence and got out, you would have got a 4R at 10%. And so it's pretty decent, honestly, for that one-time trade. So just keep that in mind. And so the whole point of that is not to try to brag about performances or nothing like that. It's to show you like this is an easier way to try to trade what you're already doing. You're already looking for entries, you're already looking for stop losses, you're already looking for conditions, right? Well, the script has that built in. Okay, the script has it built in. So if you're interested in it, I do offer a 7-day free trial for that one, and then I'll link the link in the description as well. So if you're interested in it, I also do one-time payment plans and 4-month plans. So just keep that in mind. So, anyway, that's the 4 hour. I think overall, there is some hit or miss with that. So with the divergence with my apex indicator, it will give us more of a, the interpretation will be it's a temporary, for now, temporary fluctuation in price for the chop. And so we will have to look at the daily time frame and see where that goes. Being down only 3% for the day is not terrible, honestly. But we'll see how this goes throughout the week, especially with Bitcoin rallying like it is. So now let's go ahead and go from Solana USD to Solana BTC. All right, Solana BTC. In some senses, this is very similar to the USD chart, actually. But we'll kind of keep that in mind because you kind of had this drop point that was the low for the USD pair, but that we also met that low and we broke above that range. We also broke above this price point here, and so that's worth mentioning. And then we also have this fib section, which kind of matches the middle of this, so to speak. So now for the weekly, we still have 6 days, of course, but we're going below this range. We do not want to see Solana go below this range on the BTC pair because that's going to show that Bitcoin. Well, we can if you. It doesn't matter if you like Bitcoin or Solana better, but if this breaks below and holds, that means Bitcoin is going to regain more strength versus the Solana pair. And so that also kind of confirms with the, we don't have a divergence, but we do have an Aroon bearish consolidation on the weekly. It's about halfway done already. And so that could contribute to more downside. So um, we could see a drop down as low as 0.0011 or 0.0 or 12. I'd say 1.2 to be safe. And so that would be impactful. And that doesn't necessarily mean Solana is going to go down either, by the way. It's about 15 to 20%. So Bitcoin could rally higher. Let's say it goes 50% in that time frame, where Solana only goes up 30% in that time frame. That's possible as well. And so that's the tricky thing. That's why I think it's so important to hold Bitcoin just in case, because that is impactful to your trading. So that's kind of what I see with Solana and Bitcoin. But let's go ahead and go to Solana Ethereum and try to see where this goes. Binance is going to be the best bet. Very similar structure here. I've already mapped this out. This is basically the entire price point because I think Solana Ethereum doesn't have a good history pair. I think Binance is the most historic one. I think Coinbase has one very close. But this one's pretty good because it shows the mid range and we are there. We already have these resistance zones. So if we zoom into the daily, we can see that we had this pretty big slope and it's already breaking down. And so it's interesting because Ethereum is only up maybe 2% for the day, Solana's down 3%, but this also plays into it. So I think honestly that we're going to go down to this breaker move right here at about 0.023, which makes me think that Ethereum is going to rally. Now that being said, with the ETH BTC pair that we looked at, it looks like that ETH is going to be weak for the next week or so, and then it might regain strength, maybe going into January. So that's to keep in mind. So the general consensus for me is focusing on Bitcoin for basically the rest of the year. You're going to have time to get into Ethereum around New Year's, and then focus on Ethereum for probably January and February. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And then and as soon as that happens, we can restructure back to Solana and revisit Solana as a major rallier in February. I know that's a long ways away yet relative to crypto, but that's something to keep in mind. And so honestly, that's pretty much it for the Ethereum. Like there is some stuff, but not much as well. We have the bearish consolidation, no divergence or nothing like that on the 1 week. We do have this consolidation marker here, this small trend consolidation marker here, and usually that's a sign that we're going to have a bigger move. And we'll see where that goes. This looks like it's going to go to the downside first. I think that's completely healthy. So, and so overall, I am concerned about Solana versus other coins. I think it's much better to focus again on Bitcoin and Ethereum, especially Bitcoin. And I'll never tell you not to focus on Bitcoin, by the way, because it's a major coin for a reason. You're going to have a less associated risk, even though it is a high risk asset. So, yeah, so Bitcoin for the next week or two, perhaps Ethereum for, New Year's to the end of January, and then Solana takes up after that, I think. So I think it is worth keeping in mind what Solana may do as far as lower performance, lower expected performance. It doesn't mean it's going to go down necessarily, but I think the performance overall might degrade versus other assets. So that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I know it was a little bit long. Usually my observations videos are just allows me to express everything in full. So in short summary, Bitcoin is rallying pretty good. It's getting close to 42,000. This trend line is a very significant price point. I think that once if we close above that, we're going to continue to rally to about 47,600 or so, about anywhere between 47 to 48,000, and then we might reject from there. Ethereum is looking pretty good. I think we're going to continue to rally. I don't think it's going to be as strong as Bitcoin until about Christmas time. And then I think we could rally to about 28, 2,900. And then Solana, I think that we're actually going to chop for the rest of the year. We may be bullish, we may be bearish, but nothing significant is what I'm trying to say. Especially with this daily setting up like so, and Aroon going into a wedge, perhaps that should pretty much stifle its performance for the rest of the year. If that maintains it, and then we could probably reaccumulate that back in February with an altcoin season. So anyway, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Links are in the description for Knowhere Premium and my Apex script and everything else. I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you next time.